Live on YouTube now, just to remind y'all. Can you see me now?
No.
Just to remind everybody, you're on YouTube now live, so. Okay, will you please rise for the flag salute and Mr. Shirley afterwards with prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the day and the many blessings that you've given us. We thank you for the work that we do as educators and the opportunity that you've given us to serve the taxpayers of Sumter County and the students that reside within our walls. And we pray that everything that we do and say will be pleasing to you, and that we'll seek your guidance and direction in our actions. We pray that you'll bless this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, we'll open this meeting Tuesday, June 19th, 2020, workshop at 4:30. So we will go to 97.01, the reopening plan with public input.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of our staff members for their hard work in working on this reopening plan. I do want you to know that they spent hours and hours and hours and hours, and with the superintendent trying to stay out of their way, kind of, they may not agree with that statement, but they did a marvelous job. And I think when you look at our reopening plan, you'll realize that. And you also need to understand that it changed. Friday about noon, the governor had a little press conference, and he started talking about some kind of junior Olympics or something. And I was trying to figure out why I'd been asked to sit in on the call. And then all of a sudden it got to the education part, and I saw one. And it basically had staff scrambling, and over the weekend and Monday night, Tuesday morning, they were working to change the plan that they thought they had ready because of the changes that were made Friday at noon. And so that's why the board didn't get it as early as we would have liked, because it changed dramatically Friday. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Christian, who just a reminder, Miss Moffitt is not with us. She's had a little minor medical procedure, and so she'll be out for a few more days. And so with that said, Miss Christian, you're up.
I was trying to turn my camera on, but it doesn't seem to be cooperating, Mr. Shirley. Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, Superintendent.
Good afternoon.
Board members and
Hello.
staff and audience. Our country and state school has been drastically affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We are working with our local and state health officials to provide the healthiest and safest learning environment for our students and staff. We're taking prescribed actions to keep everyone safe. To reopen our schools in July, 7 committees were created that included district administrators, school administrators, teachers, support personnel, and community members. The committees addressed ensuring students, staff, and public safety on school campuses and buses, targeting precautions for our most vulnerable students on campuses and buses, implementing health department and CDC best practices, preparing for economic impact to schools and districts, protecting liberties, rights, and contracts balanced with safety needs, instilling public confidence through open communication, growing community partnerships to assist in a smooth reopening. Frequent community collaboration was essential in creating this plan. We would like to ask the board members to please keep a list of your questions so that we can answer them at the completion of this presentation. Now the committee leads will share with you their plans. We will begin with Committee 1, Alan Shirley and Dana Williams.
All right. Well, good evening, board members, and thank you for joining with us here to discuss our plans for reopening our campuses in July. As Ms. Christian mentioned, we were tasked with kind of a monumental undertaking to outline what it's going to take in order to ensure that our student, staff, and public are safe as we start going back to school in our campuses and buses and food, transportation, everything that goes along with that. So we're going to start. Most of what you're going to see as we go through each one of the sections will have a similar format. We'll talk about what the district needs are, what the staffing needs are, what the transportation needs are, and so on. So to begin with, the programs for July that are going to be offered on site, as you can see right there, are the third grade reading camp, the secondary EOC testing, the algebra EOC camp, and then as of Friday at the governor's webinar that the superintendent mentioned, the elementary gear reading program, also known as the Governor's Emergency Education Relief. And that was a pretty sick.
Mr. Shirley, could you stop just a second? Ms. Moss just texted me and said that she lost connection. And so can we take like a 30-second recess and maybe Mr. Trick or Marla or somebody can see if they can get Ms. Moss back up? She just texted me.
Okie dokie.
Sorry.
So somebody just give me the all clear whenever she's ready or whenever she's back.
All right. Marla, did you get that?
Yeah.
We're trying to contact her.
Okay. Sorry, but I just got the text. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just. I wish we had that little Jeopardy tune that we could play while we're waiting. I guess someone could sing, Dana. Or not.
I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go out on a limb and tell you no.
Okay.
I don't sing or dance well. There she is.
All right, are we back? Yeah, I see Miss Moyette.
I'm here. I had a little adventure getting online today. My computer from the district wouldn't start, so I had to get my computer out and download Teams and get on here, and then the camera wouldn't work. I got the camera going and had a little adrenaline rush before the meeting got started.
Well, we've got a little time out waiting on Miss Moss.
Yeah.
Well,
I
am back now.
Okay, are all board members online, I mean, with us today? I don't
Kathy
know.
Joyner is not. She
Okay,
said she might not be she's on vacation. And
okay,
might not, she had signal.
all right,
All right, so we ready?
yes,
Miss Moss, are you
Okay.
back?
I guess.
I'm back.
Okay, all right, we're ready. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so
Sorry.
that's all right. That's all right. So we left off talking about the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Act that came out, and it was a game changer for us on Friday. So yesterday we scrambled to put the pieces into place. You see there that our third grade reading camp has approximately 45 students. That's what we were anticipating our elementary numbers to be as we started up in July. However, with the implementation of the Emergency Education Relief Act, that took that number up pretty significantly, because it is going to be targeting students who have a substantial reading gap at the elementary level. And whoever's running this document
It's not
is
me.
getting ahead of me a little bit. But anyway, about 160 additional students were added to our programming basically overnight. So now, instead of 45 students being our kind of opening number, it's going to be closer to 200 students, a little over. And it's going to be targeting those students with a substantial reading gap. And it's going to be, it's listed in the document grades K through 5, but it's really upcoming 1st through 5th graders. The only kindergartners that would be involved might be those that were retained and identified. And it's going to be staffed at approximately 1 teacher for every 10 students, the same as the 3rd grade reading camp. And then the EOC testing is more of a high school issue. And that's where we're targeting those students, because the graduation requirement for algebra testing did not go away. It was just basically postponed. So for those students who have algebra this year, we felt like we should give them the algebra test as soon as we possibly could in order for that material to still be fresh on their mind. So we have quite a bit of algebra testing. There's also some testing requirements in order to get the scholar diploma designation. So we're offering that as well in the summer. So that's what will be going on at the high school, on the high school campuses in the month of July. As far as transportation is concerned, based on the DOE guidelines, we are going to encourage people, recommend that face masks be worn. It's not going to be required. Using the social gathering guidelines, no more than 50 students per bus, and windows will be down when it's not raining to allow for open air circulation, which is one of the recommendations that DOE released as well. Food service. Students will be able to eat in the cafeteria, especially during the summer. The numbers are small enough, they'll still be able to socially distance. It may not always be a perfect 6 feet, but they can spread out to the extent possible while eating in the cafeterias. Then we move on to our school site location and kind of what the classroom is going to look like. The desks are going to be spaced to the extent possible. Once again, it's probably not going to be that 6 foot all the way around, because spacing just doesn't allow for that. But the DOE guidance did provide just to the extent possible as being kind of the guideline that we would work along. I'm not going to read every single bullet to you. There's going to be certain things that you're going to hear probably 10 times throughout this presentation, such as using hand sanitizer and washing hands and things along those lines. Bottom line is we want kids sanitizing their hands or washing their hands every time they enter or exit a building. We want we want to minimize the number of touch points on a door. So at a class change, the teacher will hold the door so that every single student doesn't touch the door handles. At the elementary level, still going to be allowing for recess, but the equipment, the hula hoops and the balls and things like that get utilized will be sanitized after each use before the next group uses it. And then in the office reception area, spacing chairs 6 feet apart and removing any additional chairs, which is also going to be something that's going to show up in the classrooms because we're going to be removing any non-essential furniture to maximize the space for desks and things along those lines. The other little complication in the classrooms that we have is we have a number of classrooms that have tables instead of individual desks, and there's just no way to have all of those classroom tables get replaced by class sets of desks. So what we're going to be doing there is spacing those tables out as much as possible, minimizing the number of students at each table, and then trying to fill in some of those gaps with a few scattered desks within those classrooms to allow for more social distancing to the extent possible. Guidelines as far as people coming on campus, it's pretty much no volunteers on campus. The only parents on campus will be by appointment only, and that would be for meetings with administration or a teacher or something along those lines. Not doing presenters or visitors, not doing field trips, especially in the month of July. That's just not going to be something that we do. And then trying to minimize and really eliminate, which isn't ideal from an instructional practice perspective, but for the safety perspective, no shared work assignments, not doing the collaborative things that we've grown accustomed to being really an instructional best practice because of the situation right now. And so small groups won't be something that will be utilized. Instead, it'll be basically what we call student-centered workspace, where they're essentially working in their own individual little domain. And so there's some protocols that will have to be followed by the schools. The biggest one that I think is probably most at the forefront is what happens when a kid comes to school and is sick. So using the guidelines that DOE released on Thursday, we'll be using a visual assessment model. So if a student appears to be sick, then a temperature check will be done. If the student has a temperature over 100.4, then a face covering or face mask will be provided, and the student will be referred to the clinic for further evaluation. Later on in the presentation, in another section, they'll talk more about, I believe Ms. Goodson will talk more about what happens when they get to the clinic. But we will get them to the clinic if they appear sick and end up having a temperature over 100.4. Then you see a lot of the things that I said would be mentioned multiple times, such as hand sanitizer, washing of hands properly, those types of things, teachers holding the door, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much where I'm going to leave off as far as group one is concerned, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Williams, who's going to talk about personnel and students and things along those lines as far as what their recommendations will be.
Mr. Shirley, can I ask just a quick question? I know you said when we should ask questions at the very end.
Yes, ma'am.
To the very beginning?
Right.
All
Well,
right.
and the reason for that is because a lot of questions may be answered in some of the other sections, but if you have something that's just weighing on your mind, feel free, you can shoot it out.
The only thing I wanted to make sure was that was just for July, what you just said.
Yes, ma'am.
It's for July. And the only question I had is, where are those classrooms going to be for all those students? Are they at every single school?
Okay, no, ma'am, that's a good question. So two sites are going to be utilized at the elementary level, Bushnell Elementary and Wildwood Elementary. And then the testing at the secondary levels will be happening at South Sumter High School, Wildwood Middle High School, and South Sumter Middle School will be doing some testing as well.
Okay, so the kids from other elementaries like Webster and Lake Panasoffkee go to Bushnell or Wildwood?
Yes,
Okay.
Ma'am, that's correct. Well,
Okay.
yes, Wildwood will be servicing the Wildwood zone, and then Lake Pan Webster will converge in Bushnell.
In Bushnell, okay. And they'll pick the kids up in those two other cities to go to Bushnell?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was it.
All right.
I'm sorry I had to butt in and ask that, but
Yep, that's all right. No problem. So now I'm going to turn it over to Miss Williams.
okay, thank you. Ms. Williams. You're on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm going to move on here with some of the protocols and the protocols for staff that will be in place. Of course, as Mr. Shirley talked about, we want washing hands and the use of hand sanitizer really to become a common practice when kids and the adults are changing rooms, having to touch the doors, restrooming, going to lunch, PE, recess, all of those things. So we want that to become routine practice for everyone. Mask or face shields will be recommended for staff. School administrators are going to ensure that at the end of every day, the children have wipes or the alcohol swabs to clean their areas, their computers, their headphones, their desktops, so that they'll be ready for the next afternoon. As he stated earlier, we are going to allow kids, of course, to go to a PE or recess time. So that equipment will be sanitized after each class. At the secondary level, you know, the bathrooms at the high schools and middle schools are more of the group gang style bathrooms. So those bathrooms, we are going to limit the number of bathrooms that are used so that they're not able to use all the bathrooms all over campus. But those bathrooms will be cleaned and sanitized multiple times throughout the day just to, you know, adhere to some of the cleaning protocols. As he said, wipes and sanitizers used to open and close doors and those touch points. We are also going to take the temperature of staff daily, and we'll follow the same protocols as the students. You know, if they have that 100.4, then of course they're not going to remain at work. A couple of miscellaneous items in regards to staff, because we will be doing on-site programs in July. We want to have some of those iReady packets. iReady is one of the programs that we use here in the district for reading and math. It's the actual packets that we sent home this past spring with our elementary students. We want to have some of those ready just in case there's a spike or anything happens and the children can't come face-to-face instruction. We want to have that set up and are able to get those home with the kids, you know, when needed. If we don't end up using them, then we'll send them home at the end of the program and the kids will just have that extra piece for support. Also, the teachers will work to create book lists on MyOn. I'm not sure if you guys know what MyOn is, but it's a part of, or it's an online reading program that gives them access to books on their devices. They can read the books. It has an auditory piece that will read for them, and they can take AR tests through that program for the books that they're reading. So our reading coaches and teachers will work to create some book lists on MyOn so that those children will have access to those, and we're going to use the new best standards to kind of guide those book lists so that we're, you know, beginning to build the standards into the curriculum. And also, one great thing about MyOn is we can download some of those books straight to their devices in case they don't have connectivity at home. They still have access to some of the books. I think you might have went a little too far. Can you go back down there, Mr. Crick? Thank you. Clocking in, school administration is going to ensure that a staff member is available to take temperatures, as we said before. The COVID-19 screener will be completed one time with a caveat that by signing in electronically in true time, they're agreeing to that statement. They're saying they're healthy and they're, you know, they can come to work. And of course, we're going to put some signage next to the time clock indicating those assumptions and expectations, just like is included in the COVID-19 screen. Students, Mr. Shirley kind of covered it, but students are going to work in their own workspace, no small groups, no shared work assignments, and no field trips, which that just sounds bad to say no, no, no. But, you know, of course, it's for their own safety at this time. I've already talked about the fact that we can download the books. In regards to public, As he talked about, no volunteers, parents, visitors doing any presentations, which will be different than our normal summer programs. Usually we encourage those types of things, but with everything the way it is, of course, that's, not going to be able to happen this summer. But at least they're going to be able to come for face-to-face instruction. So certainly that's a wonderful thing. And then standard protocols for anybody that does come in the front door, of course, hand sanitizer as the the white things for the touch points on the doors. You just scroll a little down, Mr. Trick. Our last piece is public notices, and there is a team that works in communication, but we are going to try to produce and on the district website as well as the school website, a list of procedures and protocols that the district is following. So just to kind of put parents at ease so that we can say these are going to be the standard things that we're doing district-wide at all centers, to adhere to social distancing things. So I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Dustin, who's going to talk about our more vulnerable students.
Ms. Dustin, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, I was talking and muted. Again, our committee looked at what precautions we would need to take as a school district for students that are considered medically vulnerable. And we started with the CDC guidelines and applied those to school campuses. Students that may be considered medically vulnerable would be students with chronic lung disease, cancer, kidney disease, having had an organ transplant, serious heart conditions, students with significantly compromised immune systems, and there's many other areas that could be considered in this. For those handful of students that'll be on campus, on the brick and mortar, each site administrator is going to identify students that we already know through Skyward and our school nurses have health care plans or health conditions that would be considered medically vulnerable. And then what the school site will do is look at, the administrator is going to look at the healthcare plan and determine, do we need additional precautions? The first committee really looked at our district's plan, and there's already a lot of precautions in place when you're talking one teacher to approximately 10 students and the spacing, and that may meet the needs of our students. But if there are additional temporary plans that need to be made for these individual students, then the site administrator will work with the parent to develop what those plans would look like. And then site administrators will also let our transportation department know if any of these students are riding buses, who the students are, and what special precautions may need to be taken for these students. Based on data that we have pulled, we're not anticipating there to be a lot of students, having looked at our information in Skyward. Ms. Goodson's section will talk about implementing health department and CDC best practices.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As many before me have said, there are a lot of things that are going to be repeated in my section that have already been talked about, and so I'm going to try to stick with just things that are new information for my department. Our group dealt with implementing best practices from the health department and CDC, and those have been interwoven into every section. And so I will try and not repeat what's already been said. The district response was to try and make sure we had adequate materials and supplies to ensure safety for students and staff. We are providing 2 reusable masks for every staff. Those are already available. Gloves for bus drivers and custodians, no-touch thermometers, portable hand sanitizers will be placed around high traffic areas. Then we had to consider for those students that were not compliant, how to deal with that. And that will either be discipline or sending a student home as appropriate if we feel like we cannot get an accurate temperature check on them or they refuse to comply. As far as training, we've had custodians already trained in the use of Rejuvenol, which is the product that is approved for COVID and many other conditions, and that will be in place. It already is in place. We'll be training folks on how to use the no-touch thermometers, bus drivers, and also office staff on how to recognize signs and symptoms of COVID. And if there are signs and symptoms of COVID, then of course that would lead to a temperature check for students. And currently we've got 2 of our school psychologists. They are licensed and certified and very well accomplished, and they're working on a trauma-sensitive classroom training for teachers. So when we come back to school in August, hopefully we'll have this ready by July, but if not, certainly by August, to give teachers a tool to help deal with the stress of re-entering school after such a long period out, and that will be an adjustment for students. As far as cleaning, I think everybody that's been hit pretty well. One thing that was not mentioned, I don't think today, was classroom teachers will be provided with a spray bottle that has the Rejuvenol in it in case they want to do additional cleaning, or there's a situation where they just want to do a little extra, or to clean a doorknob or whatever in and out of their classroom. Front offices will be cleaned multiple times a day because of the high traffic area and also folks from the outside coming in. As far as the temperature checks for staff, that's already been addressed. But for students, it'll be based on signs and symptoms. We're going to train the bus drivers to look for signs and symptoms, and also front office staff. If they notice something that gives them concern, then the child will undergo a temperature check. If the temperature is at 100.4 or higher, they'll do a second, give it a few minutes, then do a second temperature check. If it remains high, then the child will be sent home. Parents will be informed under what conditions that the child may return to school. We've got a form developed that kind of clearly spells it out with a lot of input from our local Department of Health, which has been very helpful. We need to make sure that staff are teaching kids how to wash hands. We think that's pretty simple, but they don't always learn how to wash hands. They run some cold water over their hands. They think they've washed hands. So that'll be a focus when we first start back, following the CDC guidelines for hand washing. For staff, if they're experiencing COVID-like symptoms, they should come to work, as we've discussed. The face coverings are encouraged but not required. Hand washing and coughing into the corner of their elbow is expected, with hand washing to follow up. For students, they may undergo a temperature check as needed. And also the hand washing and sneezing into the corner of their elbow is an expectation we're going to have to build in. Masks or face shields are optional for students and would be provided by parents. Refusal to comply with these expectations, again, could become a discipline issue or may necessitate sending a student home. As mentioned before, the public is really at this time not welcome on campus, sadly, but that is a temporary situation, we hope, and we are addressing some signage to inform folks why that is and our expectations for campus safety. All right, now Ms. Debbie Smith will talk about economic impact.
Good afternoon. I'm tasked with talking about preparing for the economic impact to the district and schools. It's a tough category because the district has always been frugal. The district has always been responsible with tax dollars and not been frivolous. So we just have to continue our frugality. We also do not have a budget yet. So we don't know what we are dealing with for sure next year, but we do know the economy will be impacted and sales tax, which we receive some of our funding from, will be impacted. So we immediately stressed our frugality program. We froze hiring except for core instructional positions, safety, health, and custodial. All other open positions are examined individually for absolute need. And we've frozen purchases with the same scrutiny. We have worked on building our fund balance as the last quarter was not normal, and we We're able to work on building fund balance through diesel savings, electricity savings, after school savings. We did still pay all of our payroll. All out of district travel will need to be approved by senior directors, and we will continue to brainstorm with staff in areas we can reduce spending. We remind all staff of current cost-saving measures that we already have had in place, our energy savings, our turning our lights, our turning our air up when not in use, recycling, and also monitor our FTE. At the schools submit their counts, and we monitor FTE to make sure the resources match the students attending. The schools, their task is also challenging because they have a very small discretionary budget. We do their salaries and benefits and all at the district level. So they have a discretionary budget for custodial needs and student needs. And we need our custodial cleaning supplies now, and we do our best to not affect students. The staff, the schools it'll be difficult, but they will continue to help us with freezing the hiring, looking at the scrutiny of purchases, reinforce the energy program, and again, monitor the FTE, contact prior year students that do not returns and make sure they're coming so that we can make sure our FTE is there. Staff, it's again, just spread that frugality culture throughout the district, that we are in an economic hard times, and we all need to be frugal and do our job. But to question expenditures, evaluate resource allocation, and reduce, reuse, recycle. Students, it's always our last priority to affect any student. So hopefully the only thing that students will see in the cost savings is less field trips. And that's not just for cost savings, it's also because of the COVID environment, and traveling would not be best. The public, we will communicate with our stakeholders the status of the budget, update all stakeholders when the budget is released, provide monthly status reports on the budget to all our stakeholders. Just a reminder to the board that the capital is not set by the state, and Mr. Hooton has indicated that he doesn't expect any downfall in tax values. In fact, it's slightly higher. So the capital budget should be fine. But the general fund is set by the state. Required local effort is all set by the state. And they will set that according to sales tax revenues also play into it, because it's an equalized funding formula for all districts. And now I turn it over to Lisa Whitman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our committee met, and the subject of our committee was to protect the liberties, rights, and the contract balanced with the safety needs of both our students and staff. Our job was to collaborate with both the SEA and the SESP union leadership to determine what parts of the plan might need to be bargained. It was determined that there were no substantial changes to working conditions that would necessitate bargaining or an MOU, but we did want to make it clear to our employees what would happen to them regarding those temperature checks if they indeed failed the temperature check. And so we addressed that part in our plan. If the employee does register at a temperature of 100.4 or higher, they will be given a second temperature check. And if it again registers the same, then they will be given the attached notice that you have at the back of the plan and sent home. They will be required to do one of two things. They must either seek medical treatment and or be treated for or be tested for COVID. In order to return to work, they're going to have to present a written note from a healthcare professional or a negative
COVID test result. Now, whilst they're seeking this medical diagnosis, they may be eligible to work from home if approved from their supervisor, or they will be eligible for the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and it's emergency sick leave. If the employee's sick leave has been exhausted or emergency sick leave, then they would be expected to use their own. And the next section we have is Ms. Skipper, who will present the public communication.
Good afternoon. This committee's charge is to provide strategies to instill public confidence through open communication. And so many of our technology tools are identical at both the district and school level, so this area is kind of combined for us. District and school websites will be updated as administration determines a need for notifications. And these notifications may be based on things such as CDC guideline changes, school-related COVID-19 cases, FLDOE updates, Sumter Health Department guidance changes, and any executive orders that may be signed by the governor. In addition, Facebook will be used to share updates via social media at both district and school levels. Technology tools that can be used throughout both district and school levels are Skyward Message Center, which throughout the summer will allow for email notifications to be sent to families and students. Remind, which we have for district-wide, will be used to notify families via texts and emails. And then School Messenger will be used as needed for call-out messages, and these voice messages can be sent to landline and cell phones as needed. The committee has also prepared a letter to be sent to parents and guardians explaining some of the applicable reopening plans for the district. The letter does include information on how parents should go on to Skyward and update any contact information, both phone numbers and emails, so that all of the information that we send out through these different systems will be updated through those systems, as that's how the information is pulled. The district will create and post signage at the school sites to ensure that the public is aware and confident in Sumter's dedication to safety and wellness. And then school sites will post their own signs as needed for individual sites. School needs assessments will be done, and the district will ensure that training is available for teachers for Skyward, Teams, Remind, and any other technology product we might use. Teachers also, of course, play a vital role in communicating with students and parents, and they'll be expected to communicate on a weekly basis with students and families through phone calls, emails, or Microsoft Teams meetings. In addition, students will be expected to respond to communications from teachers and to check their emails regularly during school hours. A back to school survey is currently available through June 19th for parents to provide information about their students' fall enrollment plans and to provide feedback on their spring 2020 distance learning experience. And as of this morning, 1,066 had responded to the survey. And of that number, 83% are comfortable with sending their student back to school with increased health and safety protocols in place. And the most important factors to the parents were increasing cleaning in high traffic areas, increased access to hand sanitizer, and desk space to park when possible. And those are all things that have been addressed in many of the reports earlier. And just to touch on one of the other items as it relates to this survey, the majority of parents who completed the survey were satisfied or very satisfied with their overall 2020 distance learning experience. Some of the questions were communication was clear and effective, assignments were easy to find, grading of assignments was timely and fair, and most notably, teachers communicated with their child weekly. And 90% of parents who responded to this statement were satisfied or very satisfied with teacher communication with their students. So that's a data point that teachers and administrators should be happy with. There are several additional questions that are on that survey, and we can provide complete results once that survey closes. And then finally, the district and school sites will be open throughout the summer for our normal business hours. The district tech line will also be available during those normal hours as well. And Ms. Helen Christian will now present information about community partnerships.
Good afternoon again. Our committee was tasked to grow community partnerships to assist in a smooth reopening. The district will secure help from community partners, resources such as businesses, churches, childcare facilities, neighborhood community groups, and food pantries. We will use our district social worker to assist families in need. Some of the policy and procedure changes, we did not change our volunteer policy, but we did update our volunteer brochure to include personal protective equipment and health surveys and temperature checks. We will also ask our schools to review their volunteer plans to make sure they match the new guidelines. We will be seeking help and from our community partners by presenting them with a list, a basic supply list for our home learning backpacks. We will develop a school-based partnership list with resources provided. The schools will limit access to the school campus. As mentioned earlier, no visitors or volunteers will be on campus in June or July. Parent conferences will be by appointment only, and I think someone mentioned that earlier also. From the staff perspective, upon reopening schools, volunteers will have limited access, and we worked on some of the things that we could have volunteers working on, and we allow them to return to our campus, such as assisting classroom setup, ensuring social distancing, and assisting in healthy hygiene practices, and assisting with materials and supplies. The public may assist us with completing the parent survey, as Ms. Skipper mentioned earlier. We get good response to our surveys. Support our school supply drive, and we listed some items that we will be seeking from the public as we send out supply lists to the various businesses, and encourage social distancing, personal hygiene, and staying home if they are experiencing any of the COVID-19 symptoms. This completes our July reopening presentation. And so at this time, I would like to return or open up to Superintendent Shirley and board members for questions if you have any.
Okay. Do I have any questions? Does any member have a question?
This is,
I had a few comments and a couple of questions.
Okay, Ms. Boyette.
First, I want to thank everyone on their hard work and the excellent presentation of our reopening draft. It's reassuring to know we have so many plans in place to help protect our students, faculty, and staff. One of my comments was to Ms. Skipper. I appreciate the offer to provide us with the complete results of the back to school survey, and I would definitely be interested in receiving that information. And then I just had a question. How are we doing with the availability of supplies like gloves, masks, sanitizer, soap? Has it been hard to get those materials, or have they been available?
Not sure who wants to jump in. You got it, Eric?
They have been rather difficult to get, but we've been lucky. We've gotten some vendors that have been more than happy to help us. We got on the masks early and picked out a product that we thought would work out really good, and we're able to get those. Hand sanitizer, should have pump stations and all set up for those. won't say it's been easy, but we have been able to source most of the things we needed.
That's good news. And then my last question was, we had the school improvement plan hearings. One of the big data points we're given is on parental involvement, public involvement. Is that a data point because it's tied to funding, or is there a link to funding in restricting parent access or public access? No, just quality of education. Okay.
This is Ms. Moffett. The answer to that is no. We just know that parent involvement is important, but right now the safety is more important than that piece. And that's why we're also stressing the continued communication with the parents. But there's no funding tied to that piece.
Okay, excellent.
Ms. Chairman, this is Sally Moss. I have a couple of questions.
Okay, Ms. Moss.
Okay. At the beginning, I remember reading, you said you were going to only use classrooms that had sinks in them. I don't know how many of the classrooms have sinks in them, but are you going to have extra wash stations set up? And have you thought about having any kind of classroom set up outside?
Hey, Miss Moss, this is Miss Williams. We chose to do the classrooms with the sinks at the elementary level because the bulk of all the elementary classrooms, most especially at Bushnell and Wildwood, have sinks in them. And we really want to get those kids kind of in the groove of washing their hands routinely. But we are also going to have the gallon jugs of hand sanitizer everywhere, of course. And as Miss Goodson stated earlier, probably not going to say the right verbiage, but the stands with the hand sanitizer or the wipes, those are going to be placed in those high traffic areas. So, you know, that's kind of why the sink thing was the piece, because it was an easy way to kind of begin training some of the kids and easy access to the sinks and things. But I will also say we have said about eating as well as any of the other curriculum and instruction pieces, it can always be done outside. You know, unfortunately, the elementary schools have a lot of outdoor seating in regards to the benches outside the classrooms and picnic tables and things strategically placed around campus. So it is something that the teachers in those summer programs in July can utilize, really just because of the good weather and everything, in addition to the safety piece.
Okay. Another question. With regards to the letter that is going to be given to an employee if their temperature is over 100.4, should there be a place on there for the employee to sign that letter as proof that they got it, just for our liability, or, you know, something?
We can certainly try to include that, but I think they will be sent home and it will be communicated to all employees as well at the beginning.
Okay.
And this is for July.
Right.
And they won't be, the big thing is they won't be allowed back until that they comply with either the note or the negative COVID test.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to commend everybody on, I mean, this is a very fine document that took a long time to put together in a short period of time. A lot of hard work went into it. So, I mean, I really, really appreciate it. And I know, you know, my other board members do too. You have done fantastic work in putting this together.
Ms. Moss, this is Alan. I just want to interject for just a second. I just want to clarify that the classrooms with the sinks, that is elementary specific. Our secondary schools don't have that access. And so that's where we're going to make sure that certainly the hand sanitizer is very accessible and encourage the hand washing on any kind of changes or whenever they go to the restroom or things along those lines. But that's an elementary specific bullet point there.
Okay. Well, I have seen, you know, portable wash stations. I don't know if that would be something that we would think about maybe getting some for the the middle schools or the high schools, if that's necessary or not. Just because, we are trying to get them in the habit of washing their hands when a sink is not available. So just throw that out on the table.
Thank you.
And we do have the sanitary stations like the one in front of the school board office where you can sanitize before you come and go.
Right, we're definitely going to have those. The hand sanitizer is going to be plentiful.
Those are good. Any other questions?
Yes, David Williams, have a couple questions. First question is, how will this impact instructional time? All these things take time, and I know instructional time is always important. We talk about that a lot. What kind of factor is this going to play in, do we think?
I don't know if anybody wants to jump on that one, but obviously it's going to be complicated, especially with the little ones that would take so long to wash their hands. And so, Mr. Williams, the honest answer is I suspect, especially for the younger children, that it will affect instructional time that those kids get over the course of the day. So we may have to look at doing something different with an extension or, but until we actually do it, try it, we don't know for sure. That's the beauty of having it in summer as kind of a dry run. So that in our August plan that we'll just briefly address tonight, we'll have a better idea of what we need to do.
And I'd
Mr.
like that.
Williams, Mr. Williams, this is Ms. Moffett. We look at our instructional minutes and hours per child at each school, and at our elementary level, we are way over the recommended. So yes, even though that's going to take away what we consider precious time, we are still way over the recommended that the state requires.
Okay. Another question. Oh, go ahead. I think someone else has a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Williams, this is Alan. I was just going to say, in some of our discussions, if we're being just transparent, we're probably less concerned about the instructional time as much as we are concerned about the lack of best instructional practices that we're really going to lose by not being able to have students really collaborating with one another, which is something that has become such a strength in our district. I think that's probably something in the curriculum side of things that we're probably most concerned about, even more so than the instructional time, is going to be the limitation of instructional strategies that are able to be used.
Okay, the other question I have is, and I know this might be a little premature, but obviously there's some districts, school districts, we're 67 of us out there, and I'm sure they're all trying to figure this out. So I was just curious if we reached out to some neighbor school districts in comparative to try to see, are we compare best practices? Because I know we typically do that. We do a wonderful job of that. So I'm just curious of how that went and how we compare.
Yes, sir. We do. Superintendents Association has tried to get plans from the different school districts, and the question that was asked on the superintendent's call was, when was Sumter going to send theirs out?
Yeah, let's do ours first, kind of like we did during spring break.
That's true. That was the question that was asked.
Sometimes we're a victim of our own success. That's all I had. Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Okay, I too want to thank the staff for their great work on this and urgency and all that they did. It's very well written and very well easily for us to understand, and a lot of it's common sense. I mean, we just have to learn these things now. But if that's all we have with this, before we adjourn, I will tell you that you have to leave this workshop and then rejoin the meeting on your computers. So, do I have a motion to adjourn this?
Motion to adjourn, Jennifer Boyette.
Sally Moss, second.
Motion by Ms. Boyette, second by Ms. Moss. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, do we have to say our names on that too? We, I think Marla's got that.
By unanimous consent.
Unanimously adjourned the workshop for 2020, June 16th. So thank you, and I'll see you in a few minutes.